They didn't want that chocolate. This is not like eating a Hershey bar. It's sort of bitter chocolate. It's very hard. This was to be used only in case of dire emergency, if you had nothing else. And the Army purposely didn't want it to taste too good. This was to use in emergencies. It was very hard. I would guess a lot of people broke their teeth on these D-bars. But they did serve a purpose, so just have to forget about the taste. Not that great. I mentioned that I had cheese and crackers for Christmas dinner, and the Army said, we're going to give you a good Christmas dinner. And it seems to me we had to wait about 30 days before the Army finally made good on its promises.
We might mention that after we left Bastogne, or Luxembourg, we went south in the area around Metz, it was.
And I went to Trier, I'm not sure.
Well, that's right. We came to Trier, and then from Trier across to Kaiserslautern.
Yes.
Yeah, and Kaiserslautern then to Mannheim on the Rhine River. From Mannheim to Heidelberg, and Heidelberg we went south through Ulm and Meiningen, across the Danube River, and entered Austria, and then we finished up the war in a terrible, terrible town called Garmisch-Partenkirchen. Not really. It was the site of the 1937 Winter Olympics, and the 10th Armored was the unit in Garmisch-Partenkirchen. You stayed there too.
Yeah,
you were in the town too. It was absolutely beautiful, and it was something like I know I had never experienced before. So we went up to Zugspitze, and my first experience skiing was on the Zugspitze. And frankly, I wasn't very good. No, I didn't shush down the slope. And then eventually I don't know how Phil moved, but I moved through Augsburg and then Antwerp, and took 14 days to sail across the Atlantic, and was discharged in January of 1946.
I didn't stay in Garmisch all that long. When I first saw it, I thought I'd died and gone to heaven, because it's a beautiful area. I don't know how many of you have ever been there. It was totally untouched by the war. But about 10 days after the war ended, I came down with, they then called it yellow jaundice. Now they refer to it as hepatitis A, B, C, all sorts of designations. There wasn't any cure for it. It was just bed rest and a fat-free diet. I think I was just totally exhausted. So I was airlifted to a hospital in Nancy, France. And then I went from Nancy over a period of months, weeks and months, heading east. It wasn't all bad, because when I was close to Paris, my 21st birthday was arriving, and they gave me a 3-day pass. So I got to spend my 21st birthday in Paris, and that was memorable. It took me until about the latter part of August to rejoin the unit in Garmisch, and by that time they were getting ready to go overseas, or back to this country, the United States. The Army had a point system. They say there are 3 numbers that any veteran will always know. Bob, you know your Social Security number, and you know your Army's serial number, And you know the number of points that you had on May 8th, 1945. And it was based on your length of service, if you had gotten certain medals, or I think if you were married, you got some extra points for that. So I didn't have enough points to go home right away. So I was sent up to Bremerhaven, the seaport for Bremen, and I spent the last 3 months of the war in Bremerhaven, not doing very much, but I was held over until first weekend in January 1946, and then I came back to the United States. I was discharged January 25th, 1946. So again, we had very parallel careers.
I had not heard this story about hepatitis. Do you know what hepatitis is? It's liver dysfunction. Your eyes turn yellow.
Yeah.
And, excuse me, but actually I was evacuated from Bastogne also for hepatitis, and that was my experience with that. And they didn't have too much experience with that.
No.
And then he also described that he had been to a hospital in Nancy, France, which is near Metz. I became ill in around July of 1945, and I went to the hospital in Nancy. We were there together. And Phil, what you don't remember, and you keep this now in your memory bank, that when I got into this hospital, I was looking through the material from the Red Cross, because the Red Cross is there to help you. And I saw the name of a lady who was there, and she happened to be one of my family's closest friends. And so I worked as a volunteer for the Red Cross during that period of time. You didn't see me?
I may have passed you in the hall and I wasn't even aware of it.
Oh my goodness. But that was quite an experience.
But I remember Jeanette, who was a very friendly nurse.
Do we have any more questions?
Have you ever returned to one of the places you were after the war?
I'm sorry, could you repeat that, please?
Have you ever returned to one of the places after the war where you were during that time?
Oh, have I returned?
Yeah.
Yes. Ready for the battlefield.
Yes, in 1978 or 79, I forget which date. My wife and I returned to Brussels, and we took the train down to Bastogne, and that was my first time to take the train through Luxembourg to Trier. So yeah, I did return, and it was a very emotional experience for me at that time. I could recount some experience which brought tears to my eyes and so on. But this is while I've been to Europe many times, all over Europe, since that time, I've never returned to Bastogne or Luxembourg since 1978, and this is my first return. And I will say it was an extremely pleasant and enlightening experience. And you have a beautiful country.
I went back for the first time 5 years ago. I went on a tour called In the Footsteps of Patton, and we went to Bastogne, and I have to say, I didn't recognize anything. I wonder if that Catholic church that I went to was still standing. It may have been. But the town was very heavily damaged during the war. It was bombed. When I mentioned the weather clearing, that was good for them to airlift supplies to us. It was also bad in the sense that the German Air Force was able to gain the skies again. And a very heavy bombing on Christmas Eve. But there's a book that came out not too long ago called No Silent Night. There was no silent night on that Christmas Eve. But I didn't really recognize anything. I'm glad to see that the city appears to be as prosperous today. Quite a contrast from what it was when we left.
Yes.
You said at the beginning that you were in this program so you were in the army, but you could go to college.
University.
University. So you could become officers, but they shot it. Yeah, and then did you become officers, or what was your rank in the army?
Well,